I'd like to call to order. Is my speaker? There we go. I'd like to call to order the special session that we're having as School Board of Washington Township on October 16th, 2024. As I call this to order, we're going to go ahead and do our normal Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning. So if you all rise and I will lead since there's so many. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for attending this special session. With this particular session, board session, I'd like to open the floor to any public comments about the superintendent contract, because that's what this session is all about. So if you have any public comments or anybody from the public who would like to speak, now's the time. And just so you know, when you do speak, we have a allotment of like 3 minutes per person. But at the same time, we do not talk about individual personal folks in Washington Township. The board does not respond, but we can respond later if you have a question or concern. And then I will also just keep time if there's anyone else who would like to speak. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. State your name and your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Alexandra Hall, and my address is 5716 Portwood Place, Indianapolis, Indiana. Okay. Good evening, Mr. President and members of the board. My name is Alexandra Hall, and I serve as the Indiana State Coordinator for Connection and Social Action for Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And I'm also a proud member of the Chi Chi Omega chapter located right here in Indianapolis. This evening is our third annual AKA Day at the school board, and we want to thank you all for having us and just share with you a little bit about our organization. Alpha Kappa Alpha has always been at the forefront of social justice, working to promote fairness and equity. And we're here tonight because we believe in standing in the gap to empower our communities, advocating for what is in the best interest of all people through social justice and advocacy. Our organization equips communities with the tools, knowledge, and support necessary to activate their voices and mobilize self-help. This includes sharing valuable information about African American and other women of color currently in political leadership, while also creating pathways for those interested in politics. Through initiatives like these, we are proud to sponsor public policy forums that engage in vital discussions on social justice and how to effectively take part in shaping our communities. We look forward to working alongside the board and the community in order to continue advancing these goals. I have with me some of my sisters located in pink and green, including our Central Regional Director, Mrs. Kiana W. Davis, as well as Ms. Rochelle Lavelle, who serves as the president of the Chi Chi Omega chapter, which is also home to Dr. Pettigrew, who is the chief academic officer here in Washington, and who has taken some students. She wanted me to make sure I let you know that Alpha Kappa Alpha has sponsored this college tour that she and several students from Washington Township are on. I believe they're in Virginia currently. So thank you again so much for having us, and we look forward to a great meeting.
Thank you. Any other public comment at this time? All right, seeing none, I will move to our one action item for this session. It's the approval of the superintendent contract. And I would like to recognize Mrs. George Davis as she will take us through the actual contract and announcement.
Thank you, President Turner. As the public is aware, our longtime superintendent, Dr. Nikki Woodson, announced her intent to retire effective June 30th, 2025. Since May, the board engaged experienced superintendent search consultants and received many qualified applications from throughout the Midwest. Following that process, which included extensive interviews, reference checks, stakeholder input via survey, and written submission, the board arrived at a selection. Tonight, I present for the board's approval a superintendent contract for Dr. Sean G. Taylor as next superintendent of Washington Township Schools effective July 1st, 2025.
It's okay if people say. And so I would like to, do I have a motion to approve the superintendent contract for Dr. Sean Taylor as the next superintendent of Washington Township Schools effective July 1st, 2025?
President Turner, I move that we approve the superintendent contract for Dr. Sean Taylor as next superintendent of Washington Township Schools.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there further comments or questions?
So I will go first. It was my honor to lead this process. I don't think anybody actually has this on their bucket list to hire a superintendent, but it is my honor and pleasure that we came to this conclusion. It was a lengthy process, but I think we have the right person. I'm really excited about your vision for this district, and I just really see some great things happening for Washington Township.
Mr. Fensel?
Sure. Dr. Taylor, we welcome you as the incoming superintendent effective next summer. And so we just want to congratulate you as we move forward. And even though we haven't voted, we're going to here in a moment. But congratulate you anyways. And we just look forward to working with you and appreciate your character and your faith and your commitment to the district.
Miss Fry?
Thank you. I did not know we were going to be commenting before this until just a moment ago, so bear with me. I want to say that as the newest board member, and I'll be honest, the board member who sometimes is the maybe perceived as the more difficult one, when I want to share with the public that when I came into this process, we knew this process was happening. I of course knew that Dr. Taylor would probably apply and would be a great candidate. There was a big part of me that said, gosh, I have some trepidation if that's where we land. I'm open to the process and I want to land on the right person, but I'm really concerned about, will people kind of feel like we rubber stamped something or we just kind of made the easy choice? I want to be very honest. I came into the process with some trepidation about that. And I want to assure everyone, all of our community constituents, I would not vote yes on this contract if I were not sold. After going through the process, after talking to multiple candidates, after getting to know Dr. Taylor and his vision for where this district is going to go under his leadership, I want to say that I really was. I was a little concerned at the beginning about, oh gosh, is this going to look like the kind of easy pick, the no-brainer pick? We didn't really vet a lot of people. I had those concerns, and I want to assure everyone that those concerns were all overcome for me. And I am enthusiastically supportive of moving forward with this choice. And I know and I trust that when all of you start to hear some of what he has to share about his vision, I think that's what sold me, and that's what sold a lot of us. It's the way he can articulate a vision for what he wants to do and where he wants to see things go. It's very compelling, and I think if you're not already sold on the decision, you will be once you start hearing him talk more about his.
Ms. Horst Kruger?
So it was quite an honor to be a part of the process. And it was a challenge, and it's a tremendous responsibility to select the person who's going to follow Dr. Woodson. And we did have some good candidates, and we did give this quite a lot of thought and work, and we had lots of conversations, and sometimes they were pleasant and sometimes they were kind of pleasant, and then sometimes they weren't. So I do feel like we vetted everyone very well. But I will say, to go along with what everyone else has said, but particularly Ms. Fry, when Dr. Taylor started outlining his vision for the direction of this this incredible school corporation, it was the most exciting thing that we had heard, and we were very pleased. And all of a sudden, there was no concern anymore. We feel like we have been in good hands. We feel like we will continue to be in good hands, and the team that surrounds you are stunning, and we really are very excited and pleased to see what's to come. So I couldn't be more thrilled, and this is going to be exciting.
Same thing. I don't want to say ditto because it's a little more than that. I think that This process has been long. I was here when we actually went through the process of bringing in Dr. Woodson. That's how long I've been here. But the process is tough, and it's one of the major responsibilities of a board is if you have to hire a superintendent, that is a big responsibility to drive the engine of this incredible district. I will also say that you've heard this a couple of times about Dr. Taylor's vision. Again, you'll get to know him. You'll get a chance to see what that vision is. But that is another reason that, as other board members have said, that's one of the selling points of Dr. Taylor being our next person. Nothing against what Dr. Woodson did over the time, but that's what we were looking for is, are there things that we could do differently? And Dr. Taylor came to the table with those things. Other candidates that were interviewed were good candidates, but I think the reason we chose Dr. Taylor is because of that difference in what the vision is for Washington Township. We, as board members, get our directive from the public, right? So that's how we get on the board. You're elected. And we also know what the district would want to see in a superintendent. And so we use that knowledge. Plus, as Mrs. Horst Kruger said, we're okay to disagree on certain things, but we all came together on this particular choice. So with that being said, once we say the vote here in a minute, I would say welcome to Dr. Taylor. But with that being said, there's a motion and a second. I'd like to take the call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. I'm going to, at this time, I am going to recognize Dr. Taylor and to come and speak and as he's ready to go. But only thing I'm going to say before this, you can't leave without one of those medallions.
I will not leave without a medallion.
All right.
Yeah. Well, thank you. This is a tremendous honor. It's going to be kind of hard working back and forth on the mic here, so I hope you all can hear me. But I'd like to first just thank the board for conducting such a rigorous process. There's a lot of different ways you could go, but you were incredibly methodical throughout the entire process. And I just appreciate this opportunity. And I do plan to take full advantage of it. So thank you for entrusting with me with this prize joy in this district. I will also, I do want to say to my colleagues, both past and present, how much of an honor it is to represent you. I have had the privilege of working on multiple teams in this district, from Allisonville Elementary School to Fox Hill Elementary School to Eastwood Middle School to CEC. And I truly get inspiration from the dynamic teams. I've learned a ton. You have every bit of responsibility in helping position me in this role. And I am so excited to continue that team-based approach that we've had in Washington Township. The job is way too big to do individually, and the stakes are too high, and our kids matter too much. And so that team-based approach will sustain into this transition. I promise you that. I also want to talk about a little history here. There's only been 7 previous superintendents in Washington Township schools. That's not very many. When you think about our longevity and our history as a school district. But that lineage of superintendency is a significant one. When you think about H.D. Evans, and you think about the fact that he was not only superintendent here, but he was also superintendent of public schools for all of Indiana. You think about Dr. Eugene White, who Mr. Rent and many others refer to as the GOAT. When it comes to educational leadership, I've had the privilege to get to work with him a little more closely and get to know him these past 2 years. And you just listen to a guy like that because he's a wealth of knowledge. Dr. Mervelity, who was here when I first started in the district, who was a great communicator. And then his best decision, which I'm sure he will tell you, was hiring this assistant superintendent, now Superintendent Dr. Nikki Woodson, who I will tell you, you cannot step foot anywhere in this district without seeing her leadership impact. And very few superintendents can say that nationwide. I learned very quickly when I came over to CEC to partner with her that good was not going to be good enough. And my commitment will be to sustain that standard of excellence. You've been a significant mentor for me, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart, Dr. Woodson. Our team, our team in here, we're going to work our tail off to make sure you go out the right way. And so with that, I do want to kind of talk about my rock, if there's time. My rock and my foundation is the front row up here. So I have, let's just go ahead and stand up, everybody. Go ahead. I'm going to call you out. I'm going to call you out. So I'm going to start down at the very end. That's my dad. That's Bob. And Bob is who I get my love for teaching from. So my dad coached my sister and I in about every sport from the time we were this big to the time we graduated high school. And I will tell you that not only was he all about his kids and teaching us, but he was all about all kids, which is why there are still several athletes who are retired athletes now who stay in touch with my dad. My mom, Becky, is where I get my love for leadership from. She had a my people come first mentality, whether that was in the home, making sure our needs were met before her needs, or her employee family, her work family, making sure their needs were met before her needs. That is something, that's a trait I've tried to emulate. We have my sister, Stephanie. That is my big sis. She's my older sis. And a lot of people say, oh, she must be your younger sis. But when you're in education for over 20 years, you don't age as well as other professions from what I've been told. But that's my big sis, and she's always been my protector. You have my mother-in-law, Janice. She's a retired educator of over 30 years, 42 years, second and fourth grade elementary teacher. You also have my father-in-law, Wayne, whose famous words are, if it were me, Sean, this is what I would do. So I always listen to that wisdom. We have my nephew, Max, who tonight chose to come support his uncle versus going to a choir concert. Chose to do an alternative writing assignment as opposed to going to a choir concert. That shows the kind of gentleman and scholar he is. You have my son, Drew, and my daughter, Avery. We're very proud. My wife and I are extremely proud of the young adults they are becoming. They are very kind, caring, and compassionate individuals with great work ethics, and they're not afraid to grind, which is something their dad is always pressing upon them. And then you have my wife, Megan, who's the ultimate life partner and best friend a guy could ask for. And I will tell you that she was there to help me start my very first classroom in North Carolina right out of college. And now she gets to be with me to help me set up my superintendent's office. And so it's been quite a journey, but I absolutely am not here without her. Make that clear. So I want to just close by this. I will say this. Very early in the process, and I know I'm probably over my time, but I'm going to take it anyway. Very early in the process, a member of the superintendent search firm made contact with me, and he said, you know, Dr. Taylor, your resume, with your qualifications and your experiences, you are a very strong candidate, not just in Washington Township, but throughout the state of Indiana. And I was blown away by that comment, but I also said, you know, sir, with all due respect, I am only a prospective superintendent candidate for Washington Township Schools. This is a school district that I 100% believe in. I know what is in this district, and I know what can be in this district. And my job will be to take the remainder of this school year to talk to many of you, all of our stakeholders, listen and learn and build a plan that's going to get us to that what can be. So I thank you. And so for now and always, go Panthers. Thank you. Back to you. Yeah.
And folks, before I close out this particular special session, I also want to remind, or not remind, but let you know that we're having a reception for Dr. Taylor on November 4th. Yes, that is the eve of the election, but it's November 4th. There are flyers. I'm not sure where they're located. In the back? Okay, in the back if you want one, just so you have the date and time. Just want to let you know that's not your only opportunity to meet him, but it's an opportunity to meet him up close and personal, really in a short period of time from now.
Yes.
Yes. Any other questions? Any other good for, I would like to entertain a motion to close the special session.
So
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. We're adjourned. School board meeting here on October 16th, 2024. And also, by the way, there's a lot of folks here to hear the announcement about Dr. Taylor, but as I get into the meeting minutes and start to go through the agenda, it's okay if folks don't want to stick around for the rest of it. We are obviously our meetings are open to the public, but feel free that if you want to leave, now is an opportunity, or you can stick around and listen. We'd love you to be here though. It's great stuff. First thing I'd like to do is October recognitions, which is always an exciting time for us. Dr. Kaiser will lead us in October recognitions.
Thank you, President Turner. And I can tell you it's a great night for recognitions where, if by my count, if it is correct, we will be recognizing 42 individuals and 2 schools. So we'll begin with congratulations to North Central senior student leaders and scholars who attended the Emerging Leaders Institute, sponsored by the American Association of Blacks in Higher Education on October 4th and 5th. So I'm going to read those names here in a minute, but if you are here as a member of that group, if you can make your way up to Dr. Woodson at this time, I'm going to read your name whether you're here or not. The Emerging Leaders Institute introduces necessary leadership skills, career opportunities in higher education, and provides vital information on education requirements, financial resources, and available support systems. It's a 2-day program that provides Indiana students with an interactive opportunity to explore career options, counseling, effective networking, and developing leadership skills through the lens of college presidents and other higher education professionals, other youth program directors, and community leaders. The overall objective is to increase the number of Black educators, which could reduce inequity, increase recruitment and retention of students and educators, and improve our HBCUs and higher education system. Congratulations to the following students. Do I have any of those students here this evening? All right. Come on up.
Come on up.
So we would like to recognize, come on up to Dr. Woodson, guys. Solomon Masella, Jalen Hill, Curtis Jacks, John Jones, Isaiah Gray, and Olivia Smith. Congratulations to these outstanding scholars. At this time, I'd also like to call up Anna Gruninger. Anna is being recognized as a senior at North Central who was named Indy Stars Student of the Week for September 23rd through 27th. She won over 60% of the 430 total votes cast during that week, and she was among 7 other talented students from across central Indiana schools to be nominated this week. She is an editor for the school newspaper, a member of the National Honor Society, member of Spanish Honor Society, and has been a camp counselor at Camp Tecumseh. Anna has been a youth counselor and a member of the student council. She has a GPA of 4.99. Congratulations again, Anna. We are extremely proud of your accomplishment. We'd also like to recognize Kaylin Robertson, also a senior at North Central, who was selected as Indy Stars Student of the Week for September 30th through October 4th. Kaylin won 89% of the vote. She is an editor-in-chief for NC Publications, a member of the women's soccer team, a camp counselor at Camp Tecumseh, a member of the Spanish Honor Society, has a 5.8 overall GPA while working a job as well, and makes her another outstanding scholar from North Central High School. Congratulations, Caitlin. Great job, Caitlin. The next one, I've got a group, so I'm going to take them in chunks. Get ready. So we would like to congratulate the following students who've been recognized as National Merit Scholarship semifinalists, National Recognition Program Award students. The National Merit Scholarship Program is an annual academic competition among high school students for recognition and college undergraduate scholarships that began in 1955. The program is conducted by National Merit Scholarship Corporation, a not-for-profit organization that operates without government assistance. United States high school students enter the National Merit Scholarship Program by taking the preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test, that's the PSAT, which serves as an initial screen of over 1.3 million entrants each year, and by meeting published program entry and participation requirements. So I am now going to call up students in groups. So beginning with our National Recognition Program Award students, Olivia Alvarado, Imani Darden, Nia Douglas, Adeline Flessner, Angel Franco Vargas, Emily Genrich, Alexander Goulet, Kyra Grant, Curtis Jacks, Madison Jackson, Marco Ladrone de Guevara, Elena Moore, Beloved Moraquino, Mila Roberts, Kalia Springfield, Salamata Thompson, Kaylani Tomlin, Lila Wilson, and Christina Woodson. Our National Recognition Program Award students, congratulations. I'm going to ask those students to remain up front while we call up our National Merit Scholarship Bended students. Max Baltz, Niall Gillen, Grayson Humphreys, Jake Lee, Ava Parker, and Pablo Redmond, our National Merit Scholarship Commended students. And finally, our National Merit Scholarship semifinalists, Elliot DeWright, Aiden Doherty, Sophia Farnham, Sierra Critchever, Tobin Montgomery, and Stanley Port. We'd also like to congratulate Jack Girton, a North Central student, for being recognized by the Future Presidents of America. Future Presidents of America is a week-long youth leadership camp created to engage the next generation of community leaders. It develops confidence, civic literacy, and good citizenship to reveal the exceptional character that makes great presidents and great leaders. This is the 10th cohort in program history. And again, congratulations to Jack for his remarkable leadership and representing Washington Township Schools. His Likely Out campaign. We'd also like to congratulate Mr. Brian Ramirez, who I know is here. Where are you, Brian? Yep. Brian is a Northview Middle School assistant principal being honored as a recipient of the 2024 Mayor's Latino Heritage Award, selected for the field of education in Indianapolis. Brian is recognized for his extraordinary contributions to education in Indy, and through his tireless dedication, innovative approach, and unwavering commitment, Brian has significantly shaped the educational landscape of our community. Brian's impact is evident in his pioneering efforts to enhance educational access and quality. His work has empowered countless students, supported educators, and engaged families, all while fostering an environment where learning thrives. Congratulations again, Brian. We are thrilled to share this recognition.
My former student when I was a principal.
We're also very excited to congratulate Mrs. Jennifer Dodson, our coordinator of school counseling. Mrs. Dodson has been selected by the Indiana School Counselor Association as their Administrator of the Year. She has shown exemplary support of school counseling services, aligning with the American School Counselor Association national model, outstanding promotion of school counseling services, implemented new and additional school counseling services, and improved existing school counseling services. Jen, we are honored to share this award with you, and congratulations again. We will also be honoring this evening Clearwater Elementary School, who I know is being represented by their principal, Mrs. Krista Douglas, and potentially friends. Yeah, get up, Clearwater. Congratulations to Clearwater Elementary School for being recognized by the Indiana Department of Education for meeting the state's 95% literacy goal. With us this evening. Yes.
Thank you.
Representing Clearwater, Governor Eric J. Holcomb and Indiana Secretary of Education, Dr. Katie Jenner, recognized educators from 283 schools where at least 95% of students demonstrated reading proficiency in 2024 at a ceremony at the Indiana State House in September. During the state's first literacy celebration since last February, 241 schools were recognized for reaching the statewide literacy goal as demonstrated during the 2023 administration of the iRead assessment. The September 25th, 2024 celebration marked an increase of more than 40 additional schools that are now meeting this important goal. And congratulations again to Clearwater Elementary staff for striving to improve literacy in our community. We are also recognizing Washington Township Adult Education, represented by Mr. DeLay and friends, I'm sure. Congratulations to the Washington Township Adult Education Program for being awarded the Indiana Department of Workforce Development Awards for Programs of Excellence designation. Last month, the Indiana Department of Workforce Development notified 21 adult education programs across the state as their designation as a program of excellence. DWD started this designation in 22-23 and recognized adult education programs that meet multiple state and federal metrics around student achievement, enrollment, partnering with employers, offering high-demand wage training, and high school equivalencies earned. Washington Township Adult Education has earned this designation for the second year in a row. Marion County and the surrounding counties experienced the positive impact of adult education success through increased economic activity and workforce participation of students who are upskilled through career training and foundational educational credentialing. Congratulations again to adult education and this huge accomplishment. Your hard work and dedication truly do not go unnoticed. Congratulations. That, Dr. Woodson, concludes our recognitions and identifies that things are very, very good in Washington Township.
Thank you, Dr. Kaiser. Next on the agenda is a school spotlight. Here's another great time here at Washington Township. Northview Middle School is up today, presented by Mr. Hakeem. My mic sounds funny.
Good evening, everybody. What a night. This is fun. First off, before we get started with Northview Spotlight, I know I'm speaking for all of my building administrator colleagues this evening. Of course, thank you to Dr. Woodson for her continued leadership. And we are very excited to be led by Dr. Taylor here very soon. The vision that he has for the district is exciting, and we're looking forward to doing everything we can to support that as your building administrators. Also want to congratulate again Mr. Ramirez, who just received his recognition. He is a fantastic assistant principal with us at Northview, and also Mrs. Dotson, who is a longtime Northview school counselor and now supports all of our counselors in the district. She does a lot for us as Northview Falcons as well, and we greatly appreciate that. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Ramirez, Mrs. Brannigan, and Mr. Logan to come on up front as we do our spotlight and our recognitions this evening. So Northview Middle School has been very busy this year as we opened a new building. Some of you have heard about that, and we've been figuring that out the last month or so, couple of months. Some points of pride that we have to share this evening. Not only did Mr. Ramirez just get recognized by the mayor, but he is also a finalist for the Indiana Association of School Principals Assistant Principal of the Year Award, which will be announced in November. So we're looking forward to the possibility of some more great news with that. Mr. Logan, back in the spring, was recognized as Washington Township School Foundation's 10 Under 10 honoree. So those are Washington Township alums, North Central alums, who've been doing great things in their first 10 years out of high school. He looks like he's just out of high school, but been almost 10 years. So proud. Miss Elisa Knoll had a phenomenal summer with our summer school musical, Mary Poppins, which involved middle schoolers from all across the district, as well as incoming freshmen at North Central. Phenomenal work there, and also supported by our Schools Foundation. And Miss Chanel Parks has a booming girls empowerment group called Her Falcon Squad, taking place at Northview last year and now this year. And we're super excited to see that grow as we are big believers in girl power. Our students are kicking butt. We saw a full school 12% proficiency increase in our math iLearn scores year over year in the past year. And we also have seen proficiency increases with all of our subgroups on iLearn Math and ELA, and we're working hard to keep that great progress going. Mr. Logan, our athletic director, and all of us are very proud of our Northview Fall Athletics teams. As you can see, a healthy list of Marion County championships, MIC championships, and district championships this fall already. And we looks like we're going to have a pretty strong basketball and wrestling season as well. So we're looking forward to that. As far as the school community goes, we had our ribbon cutting end of July, beginning of August to open the brand new building. And boy, were people excited to come to our school. As you can see, our enrollment has increased from 780 kids to 1,030 in a year and a half. So having that many middle schoolers every day, we've tried to keep our hallways smelling great. But that's a challenge sometimes. But we've been very excited about the excitement of all of our new Falcons at Northview. We hosted a multilingual family night here just in September, which gave a lot of our multilingual, non-English speaking families the opportunity to get a lot of great community resources that evening. And we have a Hispanic Heritage Night coming up next week as well. And we started a partnership with the National Institute for the Excellence in Teaching this school year that is helping us grow our instructional leadership team at Northview to have a much wider impact on the academics of our students and also the support of our classroom teachers. So in our focus on equitable achievement, as I mentioned previously, we've seen some pretty strong ongoing growth in our proficiency categories for our subgroups in math and ELA over the last couple of years, and we hope to continue that. We, as I just mentioned, we have our partnership with the National Institute for Excellence in Teaching. Our current instructional cycle that we are focusing on is on SIOP strategies, which help all of our students, but specifically our multilingual learners in the classroom. So those are strategies that all of our teachers across the building are implementing to make our classrooms more accessible to students who are learning the English language. We have started a partnership with Reach for Youth, and they are launching a peer justice mock teen court through our social justice class, which we're very excited to see how that kind of plays out here over the next semester. That will involve our students helping each other work through some problems that they might be having at school. And finally, a continued focus on improving our professional learning communities as we continue to work to use our formative assessments and data to inform our instruction on a week-to-week basis. Promising practices. I mentioned those SIOP strategies with our multilingual learners. We've also done a ton of work with our MTSS process to not only identify our students with Tier 2 and Tier 3 needs, but then work with our full staff to determine those interventions that they may need to help them be more successful in school. We've got some special recognitions tonight, so when I announce our honorees, I would ask them to come up here. You can say hi to Mr. Ramirez, Mrs. Brannigan, Mr. Logan, and then join Dr. Woodson up front there. So first, I'd like to welcome our student recognition, Ava Pantaleon. Ava, come on up. I try not to have favorites, but she's one of them. So Ava is, excuse me, as our social justice advocate student recognition tonight, Ava is one of our student ambassadors. The basic job description of that is she helps us with all of our new students that come into the building, helping them get comfortable with what they've got with their student schedule, learning the building. She helps us with our tours, families coming in. She does student shadows. Where she's been particularly helpful is with some of our multilingual learners. And I super appreciate how open and friendly she is to welcoming a lot of our students that don't speak English, and they arrive at school. And she is one of the first to always step up and help those kids, not just their first tour around the building, but checking in on them. I mean, her heart is huge, and it shows every single day when she is walking through our hallways. But she doesn't just do that. She is this fall, she stepped up as one of Mr. Logan's top athletics volunteers. Frequently, we sold out of hot dogs in our concession stands, and she was the first to let Mr. Logan know that what we needed to order new. So she got some great work with her math skills in that concession stand this fall. She is in our advanced choir and theater programs and has been taking advantage of all the things Miss Knoll does at Northview with those programs. And she, as a 7th grader, is carrying a full honors course, and first quarter grades are about to be out, and I'm happy to say that she's crushing it. So Ava, we are so proud of you. Thank you for being here tonight. And if her family, if you guys can, I know mom's up here, dad's in the back, if you can wave real quick. Thank you so much for giving us Ava every day.
Well done.
That was fun, right? Next up, I'd like to welcome Brooke Durham, our PTO president, as our parent recognition for Above and Beyond. Brooke, can you join us up here real quick? Got a dinner date tonight too. I'm like, man, we got to keep this rolling here for her. So Brooke has been our PTO president for the last 2 years, last year and this year. She has children in all 3 levels at Washington Township. So Clearwater, Northview, and North Central. Her daughter is a 6th grader with us right now, and I just keep telling you, you're going to be stuck with us for a long time at Northview, Brooke. In the last 2 years, she's more than helped double the Northview PTO annual budget in less than 2 school years, which has been tremendous in supporting all the things we do for our kids and our teachers. She has helped coordinate over 20 Northview parent volunteers that are coming in and helping with everything now from our Falcon Buck store during lunches, cotton candy sales, packing food bags for students in need. It's been phenomenal. I mean, I was an elementary principal. Usually parents are lining up to help the elementary schools, but you can't get anybody to walk into middle school. And she's getting it done, and we really appreciate that. I'm pretty sure Brooke's probably responsible for about 100 of our 200 new students. Everywhere she goes in town, she is talking up how great it is to be a Falcon every day, of course. And that alone speaks volumes to how much she cares about our school community, that she is willing to go out there and tell family after family after family that Northview is the place where their kids need to be. So thank you, Brooke, for all you keep doing. We really appreciate it.
Oh, come back. Not yet. So much.
And finally, oh, that was up, down. There we go. Finally, I'd like to welcome up Scott Highland as our supportive partner recognition. So Scott, if you could come on up, please. So Scott's kind of our behind the scenes volunteer that I really want to recognize tonight. He contributes significantly to Northview athletics. His efforts often go unnoticed, but they are essential to helping keep everything running smooth with our athletic programs. Just a few of the things that he helps with: he assists with all equipment repairs, ensuring everything is in top shape before we roll into new seasons with the kids. He's helping students consistently understand the basics of the games and the sports that they are playing. He helps serve with our throwers for track and field, boys and girls. You see him out there on the Gator with the cross country team, the football team. Really anywhere we need him with the athletic department, he steps up. But like I said, he's always behind the scenes. He does not like this type of recognition, but we had to make sure we got him up here this evening because as Northview Athletics too have grown significantly in the last year or two, you have been a huge part of that, and we can't thank you enough for your ongoing support. So thank you, Scott. And of course, today, like every day, is a great day to be a Falcon, but as Dr. Taylor said, a great day for all Panthers as well. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Hakeem and team. Next on the agenda is superintendent's announcements. Dr. Woodson.
Thank you. And I will echo all of the celebration comments from the evening. This is a great evening for Washington Township Schools. From Dr. Taylor's announcement to recognizing and spotlighting Northview Middle School, to all the honorees for staff and students. There is a lot of great things happening here. So we're very excited about that. Wanted to echo appreciation to the Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated sorority for their civic engagement in attending the school board meeting tonight. We were just at Northview on Monday, so whenever we have a school spotlight, we visit that school the Monday prior to the Wednesday board meeting to see the school firsthand and learn from the leaders. So if the board would like to attend any of the upcoming school visits, the sign up is back in superintendent announcements for you to see sites and dates and times for upcoming visits. Also, Dr. Thorpe, our director for our middle schools, authored an article that I'm sharing with the board that was in the Indiana Association of School Principals Journal, and I thought you might be interested in seeing that. Principal Hakeem mentioned the increase in students at Northview Middle School, but I am thrilled to announce a tremendous increase in students district-wide here in Washington Township. For the second year in a row, we have Marion County's largest student increase here in Washington Township, and not a small increase. Last year, we increased about 400 students. This year, we increased almost 600 students. So congrats to all the educators, staff who make that possible and make our schools destination schools for family choice. You have a complete ADM memo, however, in your board documents, which outlines all of the analysis from Mrs. Smith for budgetary impacts, Dr. Thorpe, who oversees district-wide enrollment. You'll have non-resident, limited choice. All of those details are in that very detailed memo for you, so I do call your attention to that. We also have the closure of our ESSER funding. We had tremendous funding from the ESSER funds that the federal government gave to schools during a very challenging time, but those are coming to a close. And so the final program evaluation reports are in your board documents. And I do really encourage you to take a look at those. What we chose to do years ago when we had that influx of funding is to say, we need to evaluate the effectiveness of how we're using those funds. It was not required of us by the federal government, but we made that choice to do that with exterior evaluators. We had a statistician from Ball State University, a former administrator who does a lot of grants, and another retired administrator, none of which were staff members in the district, working on those external evaluations for the duration of ESSER funds. And so now not only do we have a body of work to move forward with for future funding and grants, but we have evidence and data to back future requests. So it has been a tremendous effort. We were turned down by many teams because no one could get their hands around how to evaluate $40 million worth of programs, but this team did a tremendous job, and I do call your attention to those final reports. Also, Dr. Pettigrew has an invitation there for you for next month for a community effort that she is putting together with her equity series, and you are all invited. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Woodson. Next item on the agenda is now a time for comments from the public. So if there are members of the public who would like to speak at this time, feel free to come to the podium. Seeing none, I will move to our consent agenda. Dr. Kaiser.
Thank you, President Turner. Members of the board, I recommend that you approve the consent agenda for this meeting. This consent agenda includes approval of the minutes of the September 11th, 2024 board meeting and the October 2nd, 2024 public hearing meeting, approval of 3 payroll calculation summary reports, a claims docket in the amount of $18,101,990.67, a human resources report containing a special personnel item in accordance with Indiana Code 20-26-5-11.2, a classified personnel report including 35 new hires, numbers 75 to 109, 10 resignations, numbers 40 through 49, 1 retirement, number 4, 5 terminations, numbers 7 through 11, and 5 leaves, numbers 1 through 5. A certified personnel report with 2 new appointments, numbers 86 and 87, 3 resignations, numbers 163 to 165, 1 retirement, and 5 maternity, child rearing, or adoptive leaves, numbers 29 through 33. There are 3 non-competitive grants submitted. Submission of the FFY 2024 Title II-A grant in the amount of $441,730.57, and the submission of the FFY 2024 Title IV-A grant in the amount of $214,191.89, and the Technology Common School Fund loan in the amount of $1,116,000, and 1 donation gift to present to the board for approval. And that information has been provided in your packet for your review. With that, I will answer any questions the board may have about the consent agenda at this time.
Board, any questions? Entertain a motion?
Mr. President, if there are no further questions, I move approval of the consent agenda as presented by Dr. Kaiser.
Moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Now we're on to our action items. First item, action item is approval of professional development services. Dr. Thorpe.
Board President Turner, Superintendent Woodson, and members of the board, good evening. Before you is a request to engage in the services with Dr. Tracy Severance from Teach for Results. The purpose of this training is to address the multifaceted role of our building leaders, equipping them with tools to effectively analyze and interpret data, make informed decisions about instruction, and build capacity in their schools. Dr. Tracy Severance has extensive experience in education, including superintendent, adjunct professor, and chief academic officer for the New Jersey Department of Education. Dr. Severance will work closely with our teaching and learning staff and building administrators to enhance instructional leadership practices, including supporting teachers in implementing high-impact instructional strategies, fostering a collaborative professional learning community, utilizing real-time data, and supporting school culture that prioritizes continuous improvement and academic excellence. This professional development will include leading for academic achievement accountability, the role of data analysis, the leader's role in using data to improve teaching and learning, and using data to optimize student outcomes. Additionally, we plan to provide one-to-one coaching support for our targeted school improvement schools that did not receive the school improvement grant from the IDOE. In an era where educational leadership is more challenging than ever, the specialized services offered by Dr. Severance will create opportunities to build capacity and enhance awareness around data in each building. This comprehensive approach to professional development not only benefits the building leaders themselves, but also has a cascading positive effect on teachers, students, and the entire school community, making it an invaluable investment in professional learning. Our partnership with Dr. Severance will begin this November and continue until the next school year. Our professional development will include a hybrid approach of in-person and virtual professional development. At this time, I request your approval to engage in services with Dr. Severance with Teach for Results for up to $50,000 to be funded through Title IIA, which is provided to school districts to increase student achievement, improve the quality and effectiveness of teachers, principals, and other school leaders, and improve student academic achievement in our schools. Thank you.
Or Mr. Finsel.
Yes, just a couple questions. I was curious if we've worked with Dr. Severance before, or how did we identify the resource? And I assume that we've had professional development in this area in the past, and just was curious how that had gone.
We have never used Dr. Severance before, to my knowledge, and I'm not sure, Mr. Blom, do you know much else about?
I would say to the second part of your question, we've certainly implemented professional development in these areas using data as part of the impetus of our PLCs the last couple of years. And I think where we are now is kind of at a point where now that our professional learning communities are fully in place, we feel like this is an opportunity to maybe take that work maybe to the next level by digging in more deeply at the school leadership level. Right now, we've been focusing on grade level teams and the teacher level. We've got some big data that comes out of our state testing that we feel like maybe this will help us kind of steer that, especially as we transition in the next couple of years to a new strategic plan.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
This is George Davis.
I see that 6 schools have been identified. Are there some at each level, or is this all elementary, or?
It's both elementary and middle.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Just
Can you, I mean, I know some of this is TBD, obviously, but proposal is pretty light. The total is just up to 50,000, but I see a full day of on-site professional development, 7,500. You multiply that by 6 schools, you're already there. So when I look at kind of the breadth of what you might do with this, I guess I'm questioning, have you really dived down into like, what is this $50,000 going to break down to? It seems like the ask here is awfully general.
Well, this was actually handed to me, and so I'm going to answer to the best of my ability. I know we have some PD sessions next week, No, I'm sorry, not next week, the first week of November, where all of the schools are getting together. So we're bringing in the principals and the assistant principals. We have a couple of days, the first week of November, and then she's coming back. So we're trying to do this collectively with as many people as we can around the table to help all of us improve and grow in the same direction. So when it comes to like the breakdown of the other schools, I'm not sure if that's been really fleshed out yet.
Other questions, board? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the professional development services contract as presented by Dr. Thor.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Second action item, approval of renewal of Andy Frayne contract. Chief Lindsay.
Good evening, Mr. President, Dr. Woodson, members of the board. I come to you seeking the renewal of the Andy Frayne Service Agreement. Andy Frayne Services have provided interior and exterior security of to the MSWT for the past 14 years. During those years, they have supplemented our police department by providing support during sporting events, performing arts, and after-hour events as well. Their presence and partnership is essential to the everyday functionality and security needs of the district. By providing this contract, it will allow a continued traffic and security supports to the district by employing 8 security officers who are strategically assigned to all facilities. The terms of this contract are 2 one-year options to renew. According to the terms, shall be extended until July 31st, 2026. Total financial impact for the district will be $306,500. With the funding source provided through the MSDWT Safety and Security budget. I respectfully answer any questions that you all may have.
Board have questions?
I'll ask a question. I just know as a parent who his daughter is what in her 11th year in the district now, I've always been super impressed by Andy Frayne. But you're the boss technically of this contract. How do you feel their performance has been? Are they responsive? Are they able to get extra people in when we need them? I'm just kind of curious. I know what I think of them as a parent. Anything comes with Officer Tony, I'm going to sign off on. But I do want to hear, from the actual administrator in charge of this, how you feel they've done.
There has been some challenges that we've been able to work through. I'll be quite honest with you. We do have 8 officers that we rely on very heavily. A couple years ago, we had to do the way we interviewed, and that worked out. We do have a supervisor on site that when there is any kind of problems or any kind of incidents that we can have, we can get those taken care of pretty fast and swiftly. I am very pleased with the contract we do have with Andy Frayne and the services they provide. You all see them out in the inclement weather with the traffic patterns that we had to undertake over the last couple of years. It wouldn't have worked without them assisting us. They are very essential to our daily operation.
I will just make a comment before we call the vote or ask for a motion. One of the things, and I don't, all my kids are obviously graduated and gone from North Central and everything, right? However, going back to schools, for example, so I had to have a meeting with Mr. Rent actually, right at dismissal time. We didn't plan that too well. But as I was going in, and obviously you have the regular officers, but you also have Andy Frayne officers. And I was able to witness them interact with 1, the students, but 2, with parents. And it was a very cordial way. They handled situations where they had to kind of basically reprimand parents of doing the wrong thing. They handled it in a nice enough way, but a forceful way. And to me, they didn't know who I was. And so for me to, be able to see and hear that interaction, at least those officers in North Central by where the buses let out.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say that publicly that I thought that was, and I think I've mentioned this to you too,
Yes.
The resource officer, and I don't remember the officer's name. I'm sorry, I didn't write these folks' names down.
It was Officer Linder.
I'm sorry?
Officer Linder. It was
Lind-
Officer Linder.
So this is just for, people wonder about safety in the schools and all those good things. I was going in, like I said, kids are coming out, I'm going in. And even in the mix of that crowd, she noticed me and stopped me to say, you know, why are you here? Who are you? No, but I mean, that's what she should do. I didn't have my badge on or anything like that. So I thought, you know, and I obviously told her, but she said, okay, then go ahead and go in. But I just appreciate that because you never know. Somebody could put on a suit and still be the wrong person coming into school, right? So I appreciate that. I want to say that publicly though, and I appreciate the support. So
Thank-
I just want to make sure that was known.
Thanks a lot.
Any other questions, board, or comments? Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the renewal of the Andy Frayne contract as presented by Chief Watson.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, I ask for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Action item number 3, adoption of the 2025 budget resolution for the 2025 appropriations and tax rates, also known as Form 4. Mrs. Smith.
Good evening. Thank you, President Turner, Dr. Woods, and members of the board. Of course, we have this big evening. Congratulations, Dr. Taylor. But we're talking about budgets. How exciting is that? You know? So tonight marks the third major step of our budget process. The first step is when we hold a budget workshop and ask for permission to advertise. Then we advertise those budgets on our website and also on the Gateway Transparency Public website. And the second step is when we hold public hearings, allowing the public to come speak on the district's budget. Tonight is the third and final step for the board and the district where we ask for adoption of those budgets. And we have several tonight items that we are seeking your approval and adoption for. And the first one, of course, is the Form 4. This has not changed since the workshop and the advertisement and the public hearing. So this is an appropriation resolution and tax rates that list each major fund. It lists our adopted budgets that we're seeking and proposed tax levies, which are property taxes, and the approximate tax rate. So we would ask for the board's approval this evening on this resolution Form 4 as presented.
Board have questions? Mr. Finsel.
Just a quick comment. I believe that we aim high on these because the state may come back and ask us to reduce that. That's still the case, right?
Absolutely. What the Department of Local Government Finance does is they do the calculations, everything from the cities to the counties to the state level for all the schools. When they do that calculation, it can change. And what they hold you to is at least what you advertised. So if they would calculate and they would calculate higher than what we advertised, we would only get what we advertised. So that's why we inflate to advertise higher. So after they do their calculations, they will bring it down to what is needed for the district.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, board? Hearing none, to entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move approval of the adoption of the 2025 budget resolution for the 2025 appropriations and tax rates, also known as Form 4, as presented by Mrs. Smith.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Action item number 4, adoption of the 2025 budget resolution to adopt a capital projects plan. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. This is another item that's required by the Department of Local Government Finance. And this is our 3-year capital projects plan that also was presented at our workshop, advertised, held a public hearing, and tonight is the resolution asking the board to adopt that plan as presented.
Board have questions? If none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, if there are no further questions, I move approval of the adoption of the 2025 budget resolution to adopt the capital projects plan as presented by Mrs. Smith.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none, I call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. And action item number 5, adoption of the 2025 budget resolution to adopt the bus replacement plan. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. The bus replacement plan resolution also mimics the same process that we did for the capital projects plan. It was introduced through the workshop. It was advertised and then a public hearing held. And this is the resolution asking the board to adopt that 5-year bus replacement plan as presented.
Board questions? Mr. Fensel.
And just for the public's benefit, we have maybe 100 plus, 110, 20 buses, and we replace 12 every year.
Yes, we range, depending on price and the budget, we range anywhere from 10 to 12 each year. And we have over almost 140 buses now.
Okay, so 10-year life or maybe a little bit longer.
And the law requires us to, or allows us to replace them every 12 years. If we want to replace them sooner, then we collect criteria from our transportation department, depending on if it has mechanical failures or excess mileage, those type of things. And that this plan allows us, if we so choose, to replace those earlier if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. President, if there are no further questions, I move adoption of the 2025 budget resolution to adopt the bus replacement plan as presented by Mrs. Smith.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Oh, action item number 6, adoption of the 2025 budget resolution to reduce budgets if necessary. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. This is a customary resolution that is in your board docs. And upon reading that, you might think, oh, this says 2024, Mrs. Smith. Why does it say 24 when we're doing 2025's budget? What we talked about earlier is the Department of Local Government Finance calculates our 2025 budgets after we turn everything in. If we needed additional appropriations to be able to fund those budgets, it looks at our 2024 existing budgets and may request any excess that is left over at the end of the year. That's not usually how we have to do that. We make sure that we're within our means from our revenue and our expenditures, but this is a safety net in case we would need to reduce one of those during the 1782 draft preparation of our 2025's budget.
Board have questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move adoption of the 2025 budget resolution to reduce budgets if necessary as presented by Mrs. Smith.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Action item 7, adoption of the 2025 budget resolution authorizing tuition support transfers from education fund to operations fund. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. If you recall, during our budget workshop in 2019, we introduced new funds to the district, the education fund and the operations fund. Those took place of our old general fund, our capital projects fund, our transportation operating fund, and our bus replacement fund. In our old general fund, they had 4 categories, 4 buckets. 2 of those moved and created the new education fund directly or aimed toward instructional expenditures. 2 of the other ones moved to this new operations fund along with the capital projects plan, projects fund, transportation operating, and bus replacement. All of those moved into the operations fund. However, the majority of our funding, of course, in our education fund and our old general fund came from our tuition support, our ADM, our average daily membership that Dr. Woodson was talking about earlier. All those monies still come into our education fund. Therefore, Indiana code allows us to transfer up to 15% to cover those 2 buckets that I talked about that move from the general fund into the operation fund to help with those expenditures. So this is a customary resolution that allows, that the board allows us to make those adjustments throughout the year as needed for those buckets.
Board, you have questions? Mr. Fensel.
Mrs. Smith, we do this every year. I was wondering if there's a way that we could grandfather this somehow, or is it best practices to, from a legal standpoint, to do it annually?
Indiana code requiring us to do it annually.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to be able to just have one and done also, but it is a requirement as of right now. You never know with the next legislative session that's on our list to ask for that to be changed, but it has not as of yet.
President, hearing no further questions, I move adoption of the 2025 budget resolution authorizing tuition support transfers from Education Fund to Operations Fund as presented by Mrs. Smith.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none, I call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Point of information, just, sorry. I'm having issues with my board docs.
I am
Oh,
too.
Okay, so,
Look, I'm writing the vote, but yeah, something, it keeps like kicking me out.
okay.
So I just got your, I'm like, get out and go back in.
All right, thank you. Action item number 8, approval of minimum operating balance resolution. Mrs. Smith.
I just want to say, since we had this party tonight, with Dr. Taylor, I just thought I'd add all these agenda items for you just to make it even longer, to celebrate even longer. But this next item is an update to a present policy that we do have through our board policies. However, we would like to have that change and to resemble our past practice. In our current board policies, we have where we would like to, the board would like to maintain a 5% reserve balance. Past practice over numerous years has been a minimum of 15%. In talking with Standard & Poor's, who does our credit ratings for all of our bonds and leases, they asked that we update that to reflect our past practice. So this is one of the items, along with board policy that you'll see later, where we would like to update that via resolution along with board policy to state that we would prefer to hold a minimum of 15% in our education and operations funds. And would be happy to answer any questions the board may have at this time.
Board, I have one. So does this money come from transferring in, or is it something we don't charge out to increase that by 10%?
No, what it is that is just our existing cash balance at year end. And these are cash balances that we've had over years. We just, this 5% was established in 2007. We just have not updated it to reflect our past practice over the last 5 to 7 years. So yes, that is from excess funds that we've had, and that's what creates our cash balances in our major funds.
Well, we've been keeping more than 5%.
Correct. Yes.
That's what I
Yes,
thought. Okay.
customarily,
I thought it was
in
like
your
10.
board packet, you'll see over the last several years in 2023, our operating balance in our education fund was over 18%.
Okay.
And then our in our operations funds, it was even larger. It was about 75%, and that was done by design because we were utilizing some of those funds for some of our major improvements that we're doing now.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Fensel.
And it's mostly to support our bond rating.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Bond rating and for any emergency things that could happen in the future, such as we had the pandemic happen. If we wouldn't have had excess funding during that time with ESSER, we may have to tap into some of our reserves, and that's part of that.
But the resolution was at the request to support our.
Absolutely. Yes.
support
The
this
change in the
rating.
board policy would be just to update that per our past practice, but the resolution was at the request of Standard & Poor's.
Okay. Court.
Mr. President, I move approval of the minimum operating balance resolution as presented by Mrs. Smith.
Second.
It's a move and second. Any further questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Action item number 9. We're on the back page now, and you're still approval of credit procurement card use resolution. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're keeping this party going. So in your board packet, you'll see the explanation for this resolution that we're asking for approval. In, as past practice, we have corporations, what we call district credit cards that come from our district accounts. Over the last several years, since the pandemic, we've run into a lot of challenges through our extracurricular accounts. So they, in the past, they weren't favored by our State Board of Accounts. Therefore, we took it upon ourselves. Of course, we don't want to mix that. They don't favor it. They've told us through some audits that they prefer that we didn't have them. So that's the lane that we took. Over the last couple of years, we've had challenges with vendors all of a sudden not accepting our purchase orders through extracurricular. So their means of purchasing through, it could be performing arts, it could be athletics that's doing a tournament or anything like that, that they have to pay fees. All of a sudden, places started not accepting the purchase orders, and the only way that they'll accept it is through a credit card. So therefore, I went back, I made a plea to the director of State Board of Accounts, listed everything that we would put in place to be able to do something like this, and got the head director's approval for establishing credit cards at the secondary level through extracurricular. Through that process, we will develop the guidelines to basically mimic what we do at the district level. They will have procedures and check out, sign in, detailed receipts, all those things that will be required. And there'll be limited amounts of credit cards that will be issued through the extracurricular. And they will be housed with the extracurricular treasurer, with that person as the main custodial of those funds, along with the building principal. So this is another requirement that the State Board of Accounts, when they did respond to us, indicated that we would need to have board approval to be able to add the ECAs to credit cards along with our district credit cards that we already had established. So I would be happy to answer any questions for this action item this evening.
Well, one real quick, I mean, it's kind of a comment. So it sounds like you had to do the initiative to go out and get this, okayed, if you will.
Yes.
So is this just Washington Town? I mean, this is not your place to figure it out what other districts are doing, but nothing like this existed before you?
No. Previous other districts have done this without the formal approval.
Oh.
I'll let you know that.
Okay.
As you guys have known over my 4.5 years here, I am by the book type person. And if I'm going to change something from what we were guided to not do, then that's why I took those measures to be able to get, the formal approval from the highest up person, and that we will keep that on file for when they do come to our audit.
Yeah.
And one of those auditors might say, hey, wait a minute, remember we told you, no, your boss says, yes, we can. And we did a resolution with our board, and we're okay. So we're good.
Well, thank you for
Mhm.
doing that. Appreciate taking that initiative. Board, any other questions?
Mr. President, I move approval of the credit procurement card use resolution as presented by Mrs. Smith.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Action item 10, approval and adoption of second reading of legislative policies, A300, A301, B150, B200, C175, D200, E125, and G360, presented by Mrs. Smith.
Thank you very much. This evening, I did want to preface this action item. I have been working alongside Mr. Rent, our wonderful principal from North Central, as an additive for a requirement for his superintendent's licensure requirements. So this is one of the projects that he's working on. So he has attended several meetings with our board liaisons, also several private meetings where I have taken him through the regular process of what it means to and details for adopting or revising board policies. And this evening, I also would like, with the board's approval, for Mr. Rent to be able to present this action item for the board for your approval. And I would like, if that's okay, I would like to call Mr. Rent up this evening to do this wonderful task.
Excitement
Love to
continues.
share
Yeah, you
it.
do.
It's
Yeah.
Fun.
Already know.
Good evening, President Turner, Dr. Woodson, and members of the board. As Ms. Smith said, we've been working on this set of board policies as a part of my superintendent's licensure requirements. We would like to bring the second reading and adoption of the following policies based on legislative changes. Policy A300, responsible use of technology, adds references to AI and incorporates 2024 case law on employee social media accounts. Policy A301, wireless communication devices. This is new. It incorporates 2024 legislation on student possession of wireless communication devices, including but not limited to cell phones. Policy B150, organization. Optional deletion of obsolete language on safe deposit boxes and fees for meeting notice, which is now typically handled electronically. Policy B200, membership, incorporates 2024 case law on board member social media accounts. Policy C175, student attendance, academic engagement, and truancy prevention, incorporated 2024 legislation on truancy prevention. Policy C525E, release and authorization form for adult volunteers. This is a form that does not require board approval, but goes along with the existing board policy. The policy was in our April batch, but didn't include this form at that time. Policy D200, standard of care and supervision of adults. Optional addition of language allowing superintendent's designee to transmit information or images on ECA, co-curricular participation, and student awards recognition. This was in our May batch, but this version has been updated as such. Policy E125, promotion, placement, and retention of students. This policy is new. It adds provisions required by 2024 legislation on retention requirements, exceptions for students who do not pass iRead, which is listed as state determinant assessment in case the state has changed the name of the test. Policy G360, data breach and protection. This policy is new based on guidance from the U.S. Department of Education. Ms. Smith and I, mainly Ms. Smith, would be happy to answer any questions at this time. And if not, seek your approval and adoption of the second reading of these policies as presented.
Board have questions?
No further questions. I move that we approve and adopt the legislative policies A300, A301, B150, B200, C175, D200, E125, and G360 as presented by Mrs. Smith and Mr. Bruns.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further questions?
Point of discussion.
Mhm.
I didn't do this the last couple times, but since we actually do have more of an audience today, at least every couple meetings that we do this, I do like to just let the public know that we do have board members on a policy committee. I have had the pleasure of being on the committee since we've started this project, a year ago. So it's just my every so often reassurance before we vote on this. Yes, I promise we've read them and promise we know what we're doing, because I know it sounds like a lot of administrative rigmarole, but I promise I have not only read but have discussed all of these as an ongoing process. So I just want to assure the public, as sort of crazy and administrative and like it sounds like rubber stamping we're doing, there's a lot that does happen behind the scenes.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain, I ask for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, team. Action item number 11, approval of the first reading of policies D375, F350, G175, G450, G500, H100, H225. Mrs. Smith.
Oh, no. Is this my last one? Come on.
Time flies.
Thank you, President Turner, Dr. Woods, and members of the board. I bring to you a first reading of the policy numbers that were just stated, and I would like to review just a couple of those. In your package, you'll find C175E, which is religious instruction attendance form. And this is one of those forms that that goes along with the policy C-175 that was previously adopted. Next, we have policy D-375, and that is employee discipline. And this replaces policy 3139. And this is another one of those where the law does not require this policy, but is based on law. Next, we have policy F-350, reserve and liquidity policy. This replaces policy 6210.01. And this is the policy that I was referring to earlier with the resolution for our minimum reserves. And this is one that the Standard & Poor's has asked us to update to reflect our present and past practice of our 15%. Next, we have our policy G-175, chemical management and preparedness for toxic hazard. This replaces policy 8431, and this policy is required. Next, we have policy G-450, advertisements, publications, and naming rights. This replaces policy 9700.01, and this policy is recommended due to a lot of public relations. Next, we have policy G-500, intellectual property and ownership revenue. This policy is optional, but highly recommended. And next, we have policy H-100, school visitor and parent family engagement. This replaces policies 2261.01, 2281, 9150, and 9250. This is required and contains Title I school visitor info and parent and family engagement information. Last but not least, this is policy H-225, and this is public comment and concerns. This replaces policy 9130. The law does not require this, but this policy is based on law. And wanted to bring one thing to light when we had a meeting earlier today, and you'll see a revised policy in your board packet for this. And the only change that was made was as a suggestion and for the public comment minutes not to exceed 21, that was recommended from our Church Hiddle to go with a lot of them school corporations in the state of Indiana and change that 21 to 30. So we did make that change, and that is in your that copy is in your board docs and is labeled as revised. Now, I did want to add just one thing, if you don't mind, to what Mrs. Fry was talking about, just so the public kind of knows. The reason why we have so many of these at all these board meetings for this last year is we were converting over from a different board policy structure to a new structure. So what we did is we took the 1 year and we went through all of our board policies and then streamlined a lot of those. It's not that we were purposely getting rid of them or anything like that. It was, for instance, I'll give you an example. There might have been something on employees or anything in that effect in a certain criteria. What we used to have through a company called Neola is we would have a policy on certified staff, a policy on administration, policy on classified, but they would say exactly the same thing, but only that different criteria. So a lot of those have been combined and been able to be reduced and streamlined into these new policy structure and numbers. And along with that, what we will do as an end to this major restructure is we will meet with Church Hiddle along with our board liaisons and myself and go through line by line, meaning what our old policy numbers were, and then what replaced them and any that were outstanding that either the board may want to still have and introduce as a policy or that could go in conjunction with an administrative guideline. So that last crosswalk will be done over these next 2 months, and we'll have a final conclusion for you at that time. I would be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
So one of the things, I know this is the first reading on these particular documents, but to the point you made about the change to the public speaking piece, public comment section, once these go through second reading and we vote on it, should it pass, then we will make some changes, other changes that are in there about signing in and all that good stuff too. So just so the public knows that there will be slight changes to all these policies, but to this one in particular.
Right. Originally, let me add, for originally the proposed one was suggested from some other districts that the public would have to register 24 to 48 hours beforehand. We chose not to do that. We might, like indicated, have a simple sign-in sheet that when you're walking in, you might sign in a sheet, those type of things. So all that will be flushed out before the second reading and then communicated as such as those changes that the board may choose to do.
Perfect. Other questions, board?
Just another point of clarification on that. And this is first reading, so we can
Yep.
still take modifications, but also wanted people to know, although we are putting that kind of limit in there to be on the safe side, the policy does also include that we as a board at any meeting, if more than 10 people show up wanting to speak for 3 minutes each, we are able as a board to say, hey, we have 12 people, we want to hear from them. So, we've always kind of had that limit because, just in case 100 people show up to every meeting, we got to be able to get our business done. But
Right.
I do want to make it clear, this isn't any kind of restrictive thing. It's just sort of making some tweaks to what we've always done. And we will still always have the ability as a board to allow those limits to be exceeded if the situation merits.
Great. Thank you.
Entertain a motion?
I move that we approve the first reading of policies D 375, F 350, G 175, G 450, G 500, H 100, and H 225 as presented by Mrs. Smith and Mr. Wren. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. And thank you for the Mrs. Smith show. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, now let's change it over to our favorite presenter, Mr. Booth. First item on the agenda is approval of Smith Associates notice of additional services for North Central High School Phase 3 through 6, I'm assuming, 3, 4, 5, and 6?
3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay. Mr. Boots.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Dr. Woodson and members of the board. I am here this evening now. By the way, I thought I had a lot of action items. Requesting approval of a notice of fee adjustment for Schmidt Associates at North Central High School phases 3 through 6, dated October 7th of 24. I would also like to recognize Lisa Gompers is here tonight with Schmidt Associates. She's our worthy leader of all of the design projects here on North Central High School. It's in April of 23, we were before you seeking approval of fee adjustments for Schmidt for phases 1, 2, and 3, but base bid only. At that time, we knew we would be seeking adjustments at future phases of the North Central High School project. So this request for adjustment of design fees for the North Central High School phases 3 through 6 reflects the contractual adjustments at the completion of the final design phase of the design process for the complete phases 4, 5, and 6, and the adjusted fees due only for the alternate bid items for phase 3. So that was just a timing thing. We had delayed accepting the alternates at phase 3, and it occurred in the interim time there. This request has been thoroughly vetted by myself, Ms. Britton Smith, and Mrs. Smith, and determined to be in strict accordance with design contract entered into with Schmidt in July of 2020. Schmidt's letter dated 10/7 of 24 with all related backup is included in your board packet. Total financial impact is $673,347, and of course comes from capital referendum funding. Be happy to answer any questions.
Board have questions? Mr. Fensel.
Just a little deeper explanation. I understand the alternates in phase 3,
Yeah.
and then just generally for the public, the increase for phases 4 through 6. Can you describe that again for us?
Sure. So at final design time, the contract says, when the contract was negotiated back in 2020, I believe it was, the fee structure was laid out by project. with a percentage amount of construction cost at the end of final design. So when each project reaches that phase, we freeze that snapshot, and that's what drives the adjustments. So in this case, these phases 4, 5, and particularly phase 6, which is the services center, that one increased quite a bit and was the major component supporting this change.
And is that driven by construction costs increasing during this time, or is it expanded scope?
It is both. Anything over and above what was anticipated at the time the contract was entered into. So they've been very good about working with us in light of the, I'll say the trajectory of inflation, because that doesn't necessarily drive more services that has to be performed. It's just more cost. So they've been very good about ratcheting down that and about analyzing the intent and the effort involved in alternate bid items. So if it's a very small thing, it's a very small improvement, not the entire percentage-based fee adjustment.
So if something goes up significantly in price, but it doesn't cost that much more to design it, we might not be paying the full percentage on the total cost, but maybe rather the just for the effort of getting the design done.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move that we approve, I move for the approval of Schmidt and Associates Notice of Additional Services for the North Central High School phases 3 through 6 as presented by Mr. Boots.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Action item, next action item, approval of release and settlement agreement with Alderson Commercial.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I am requesting approval of release and settlement agreement to Alderson Commercial for the renovation of the Eastwood 2020 project. This release and settlement agreement represents the mediation settlement to resolve a longstanding dispute with Alderson Commercial. This settlement resolves all outstanding issues with Alderson and allows the contract to be closed. During mediation, considering the advice of counsel and with the experience in these issues, a well-considered decision to resolve the matter and remove the risk of any future legal actions and associated costs and potential additional cost exposure was reached. I want to be clear that this is the requesting approval of the agreement itself that has a settlement amount in it of $82,012.72. But the vehicle for that change order, for that amount, will be a change order in a future action item for change orders. So this lists that amount that's representative in the agreement, but we don't have any kind of a double up on that payment. And as I noted, it is $82,012.72 out of capital referendum.
Board have questions? Mr. Vince?
To comment that the mediation process obviously reduced the amount that was claimed.
It did. Our total exposure exceeded 450. That was the claim. That doesn't, so mediation is a dive to an agreement. There's nothing fair or right or reasonable about it many times. It's just how do we get to an agreement? So,
Thank you.
Mrs. Horth Krueger?
Mr. Boots, can you help us understand again what we're voting on tonight, the 82,000 plus, that is the settlement or for the mediation, and then you said something about future change orders. I just want to make sure that we're understanding the difference between those.
Sure. Let me dive a little bit deeper then. So the overall agreement reached with them was actually $190,000, but that included $107,000, a little bit more of what we refer to as retainage, where we withhold a certain amount of payments on each of them as an inducement to complete work. That was on the table because they didn't complete the work satisfactorily. So we had that held in retainage. So when we agreed to 190, the net add was actually only 82,000 because we had 107 and some. And so we are this agreement just recognizes that settlement. It does not authorize any additional payments. That will come via a change order that will be in the change orders action item here in just a few.
But the difference between those, the 17 and the 82, 107 and 82, that will be applied to any change orders that are coming?
No, there'll be one more change order coming for 82-12-72. It will, the part of the agreement also says we will release that amount of retainage.
Okay.
So it's only an added cost to us of the 190 less the 107, because that's what we have in retainage. We already have those monies. And the only added cost for Alderson is the 82,000.
Thank you.
No, didn't get it?
Confused. Let me try this again.
Okay.
So this action item is basically saying we're just approving the settlement, and then the change order is the actual amount that we're settling on.
That's correct. The
Okay,
80
I'm there.
the 82 is just in the agreement. It says we will pay you.
Okay,
The change order is the vehicle
is the actual payment.
where we can actually authorize. it.
Okay, okay, I'm there now.
Yes. Okay.
Entertain a motion?
Sure. Mr. President, I move approval of the release and settlement agreement with Alderson Commercial as presented by Mr. Boots.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Next action item, approval of 2020 capital construction project change orders. Mr. Boots.
And I am requesting, Mr. President, approval of a list of change orders that I'm obligated to recite here. So this first change order is the one we were just referring to that authorizes those dollars in the agreement. So change order number 015, revision 1 to Alderson Commercial for Eastwood project. Change order number 016 to Alderson Commercial. And that is a deduct where we're just recovering a few allowance dollars that were hanging around, if you will. But that allows that contract to be closed. Change order number 001 to North Mechanical for Eastwood. Change order number 002 to North Mechanical for Eastwood. And change order number 003 to North Mechanical for Eastwood. And that is just a settlement of all outstanding and open items for that contractor. And again, allows that contract to be closed completely. Change order number 002 to Powers and Sons at Eastwood. Change order number 003, Skillman Davis Joint Venture for North Central Phase 3. Change order number 005 to Temperature Control Services for Greenbrier. Change order number 011 to Shield Sexton Harmon Joint Venture for Nora Elementary. And lastly, change order number 008 to Shield Sexton Harmon Joint Venture for Fox Hill Elementary. Be happy to, a total financial impact, sorry, $419,845.57 out of course, capital referendum projects.
Board have questions? I just have one quick one. It's kind of a repeat. I've asked this question before and you've answered, but I just want to kind of get it on record again. So when we change order, I just had it. Oh, I just saw it. I'm sorry. But it's a change order where we had to go back because something was left out. Oh, design error. It's change order 001, Eastwood.
Yes.
So so I get, when you go in and do renovations, things are unexpected, you say, oh, we got to do this, do that. Or if the district comes back and says, hey, we want to add a washer dryer, we have to add into it. But when there's design errors, why is it that, again, why do we pay for the design error and don't take responsibility for the design?
Yes, they will. They
Okay.
will. We do pay for it now. We tally and track each and every change order as to its source. And then as the project wraps up, we we discuss with Schmidt that according to industry standards. And if it exceeds the level of reasonableness, excuse me, then there'll be some compensation return.
Okay, I know you've said that before. I just wanted to say that again. Any other questions, board? Entertain a motion.
The 2020 capital construction project change orders as presented by.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Approval, next item, approval of automation controls purchase agreements with temperature control services for the Washington Township Services Center, Phase 6. Mr. Boots.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am requesting approval of purchase orders number 13 and 14 for building automation controls for Washington Township Service Center, which we are terming Phase 6. Purchase order number 13 provides the base contract controls work, and purchase order number 14 replaces the antiquated Andover control system entirely. As a reminder, in May of 2021, the board approved a consulting agreement with Temperature Control Services through which these special purchasing agreements will be administered. That was included in your board packet for reference. These purchase orders are, as always, are prepared in consultation with the district's council and have been vetted by the capital projects team and do recommend approval of the purchase orders. The total financial impact of these two purchase orders is $823,944.29. Be happy to answer any questions.
Board. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
The automation controls purchase agreement with temperature control services for the Washington Township Service Center, Phase 6, presented by Mr.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Next action item, approval of Washington Township Services Center renovation phases 6A and 6B, GMP for the Skillman Corporation. Mr. Boots.
President, I am requesting approval of the Washington Township Services Center renovation phases 6A and B, guaranteed maximum price for the Skillman Corporation. And again, I'd like to recognize David Yancey, the Skillman Corporation is here, and Executive Vice President on our projects. Bids for the Washington Township Services Center renovation Phase 6B were received on September 10th. Skillman Corporation has conducted a pre-award conference with the apparent low bidders and has provided the general guaranteed maximum price amendment attached to the board for execution. A total of 63 contractors were solicited to bid on this project across 8 bid categories, and we received 22 bids. The overall total of the bids was well below the estimated and budgeted amount for this phase. I would also happy to note that we achieved success by achieving 42.7% XBE participation in these bids. And to be clear, and as we have done in the past, when these projects are bid in phases, as this one has, each subsequent GMP includes and supersedes the previous GMP. So we were before you a couple of months ago. We received bids on Phase 6A, which consisted of some work on the warehouse and some work on the exterior of the services center. This GMP now supersedes that and includes 6A. And then we'll have yet a third phase that we'll bid later in this year that will be back, and that would be the end of that project, which, by the way, is the last of the major projects in the referendum program. Total of this GMP is $10,335,848. And of course, funding source is referendum funding. Happy to respond to any questions.
Board, Mr. Finsel.
Do you recall the approximate amount of the previous GMP that we would have approved? Or did,
four, do you remember, David? I want to say about, not much. It was only about 300,000. How much? Oh, 2 million.
More than 300,000.
A little more than 2 million.
You were close.
Yeah, close.
Yeah.
That's why I don't guess.
300,000.
So this additional 8 million.
That's-
Yeah, okay, just wanted to understand.
Another question. You mentioned this actually coming in a little bit below where we were anticipating and budgeted. Can you remind me how much?
It was, there's another detailed question.
Ballpark.
We were considerably below, I want to say about $1 million below our estimate. Estimating is so wonky right now because of the way the prices are and things are sky high. So try to be conservative while maintaining our budget. And this one we came in a little bit under.
Other questions, board? Entertain a motion?
The Washington Township Services Center renovation phases 6A and 6B AME for the Skillman Corporation as presented by Mr.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. And thank you, Mr. Boots, for the second most agenda items. Now, last couple items. The first one is the approval agreement with Advancing Public Schools LLC Consulting for grant writing services. Dr. Taylor. Yeah, really.
It's the info item.
Yeah, yeah. Party starts with me and it's going to end with me. Yeah, so President Turner, members of the board, Dr. Woodson, good evening. I am requesting approval of the agreement with Advancing Public Schools LLC Consulting of Grant Writing Services this evening. As you know, we are in the process of pursuing the Lilly Endowment, which has allocated up to $450 million for this multi-year initiative for eligible public school districts, public nonprofit schools throughout Marion County. It includes a three-phase process. You're familiar with phase one, planning grants. That's up to $50,000, which we applied for already. Phase two is the next part of the grant, which has the potential to be up towards about $6 million. And then phase three, which is a competitive grant, where there's an allocation of up to $375 million throughout. So significant funds here. And so what we would like to do is we'd like to engage Advancing Public Schools LLC to assist us with this grant writing process because this is a substantial grant proposal. And so there's a pretty significant scope that will come along with it. And so we believe that engaging with Advancing Public Schools LLC to help us write that, we will be incredibly thorough in our approach because this is an experienced grant writer, very familiar with the district and familiar with how things work at the state level as well in terms of public ed funding. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have regarding this.
Mr. Finsel.
I was just curious, the timing of the anticipated award for the phase one from Lilly Endowment is, I know we've applied for the 50,000. When do we expect to hear?
We're supposed to hear this month.
Okay.
Yeah, and so in the phasing of this, the funding source would be the Lilly Endowment. So upon receipt of that 50,000, a portion of that would go towards phase one work and phase two work with regard to this partnership with the grant writer.
There are no further questions. I move approval of the agreement with Advancing Public Schools LLC Consulting for grant writing services as presented by Dr. Taylor.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Next action item, approval of an agreement with District Strategic Planning Partner, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you again, President Turner, members of the board, Dr. Woodson. Similar, we are seeking a partner for strategic planning purposes. So this is a service agreement that will help us conduct a comprehensive review of our current district strategic plan, identifying its strengths and its challenges, This collaboration will engage various stakeholder groups to define future priorities that will enhance our upcoming Lilly Endowment grant applications for Phase 2 and Phase 3. By the conclusion of this partnership, we aim to launch a new 5-year district strategic plan at the start of the 25-26 school year. After a thorough evaluation of 3 highly recommended consulting firms, we've selected Education Elements. They are already and have been doing work around Marion County and the surrounding local districts with Wayne Township, Zionsville, and currently in Franklin Township. Wayne Township's used them multiple times, but they have experience working with over 400 districts and over 5,000 schools nationwide. They have a proven track record of developing and implementing effective plans tailored to meet the needs of a diverse student body. Education Elements consistently receives outstanding feedback, with 100% of their clients considering them trusted partners, 96% rating to support their effectiveness, and 90% of their business is derived from repeat clients. So I'm requesting your approval for this version of the master agreement, with the understanding, though, that further revisions could be made pending superintendent and legal counsel recommended revisions to some of the provisions outlined in the master agreement. So to explain that, right now, the scope of this agreement in terms of what's outlined in the action and the work of this, along with the costs, will not change. I'm simply asking for an amendment for Dr. Woodson, designee, Mr. Mays and legal counsel to continue to work through an analysis with their master service agreement, which is kind of a separate provision of about 25 pages of provisions that there could be some slight amendments to that. But due to timing of all that, we felt like we needed to proceed so that we can get going with this partnership and collaboration, both with our new grant writer and with our new strategic planning partner. So they might be small edits, but that would prevent us from having to come back for board approval for any further changes to the master service agreement. Again, scope would not change. Cost would not change.
Mrs. Horth Krueger.
Dr. Taylor, just help us understand the timeline for all of this. I mean, with this cost amount, how long do you anticipate Education Elements actually being engaged in this process?
So I would anticipate upon your approval, them getting engaged October. And then that would continue depending on our Phase 2 grant outcomes. It would continue into the spring semester to start a launch of a new district strategic plan, wrapping up in about June, ready to go July.
Thank you.
So, and this kind of ties into what Mr. Fensel asked earlier, and as well as Ms. Horth Krueger. So looking at this agreement, it says the first payment's due November 1st. You won't know, we won't know, even though the second phase is non-competitive as well, but we won't know officially that we received the second phase, right? So is that kind of in your answer there? Because if they start now, we would have to pay for that out of pocket, if you will.
Yeah, so starting now, the first part of that phase would be based on this 50,000.
Okay.
That's the first phase, but you're correct. In the second phase, if we, for some reason, weren't successful in achieving that, we would have to consider some alternatives for continuing forward. I will say, though, that they are well aware of that. They are well aware. They're very in tune with this Lilly Endowment. I don't suspect we'll be the only district that is working with strategic planning partners. I've heard lots of districts are looking at strategic planning partners right now. So they are willing to work with us on when the funds come. So there is flexibility there for that.
I would share also that this process for strategic planning, why it will tie into the grant writing process for Lilly, it is essential for the district at this transition time as well. So even if Lilly was not on the table and that grant opportunity wasn't in front of us, I still think it's a really important process and the timing is perfect to allow us to do this. So if for some odd reason we aren't successful with Lilly going forward with the future phases, this is still vital to the future of the district.
Mr. Fensel.
Have any concerns, Dr. Taylor, regarding capacity from the firm if they're working with numerous other districts?
I asked that, and they are a national firm. So that was one of the things that drew me to them, was because of their national presence and all the representatives on their teams. So, and please understand, when I say other districts aren't necessarily using them, they're using other strategic planning partners. The ones that are local right now are Wayne, Zionsville, and Franklin that are currently engaged with them. They did not have any concerns coming aboard to Washington Township to help us out.
Thank you.
Okay, based on something Dr. Woodson just said, so understanding, I think it's a great idea to have an outside source come in and help us with the strategic plan. I think that's different set of eyes, the knowledge of what they can bring to the table. But at the same time, again, I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but if something were to happen in the phase 2 for Lilly doesn't happen, are we anticipating, I heard you say earlier, we make adjustments, but if they got started, and then we wouldn't want to necessarily change midstream if they've already started, where would, have you thought about where this funding would come from?
Yeah, so we've talked about some preliminary contingencies in that sense, but absolutely, there's some other opportunities, but we would have to take a very close look at that for sure. But as Dr. Woodson alluded to, it is a priority to take this remaining school year to really engage and dive into this work as we launch into a transition this summer.
Okay, and keep bringing this up because we're voting today based off the funding source you have here. And if something were to change, then that would be null and void. We wouldn't be doing the same thing because we're voting on the Lilly endowment.
Yeah, so that could be something where we would have to come back in
Right.
that case if we didn't get that and amend the
Right.
funding source. So we would do that.
We'll reiterate, phase 2 is also non-competitive.
Yeah.
So
I'm just
Feel pretty positive. that-
always want to put the
Absolutely.
absolutely.
contingency out there. You never know. But I mean, Lily's good at what, if they're saying they're going to do something, they do it. Okay. Board, any other questions?
Sorry, one last
Mhm.
one. And Dr. Taylor, you already maybe answered this a little bit because I noticed the proposal. I like that they have national scope, but they also have done some local work. It's a
Yes.
combination. But since we obviously didn't see any of the other proposals, can you give me 1 or 2 more bullet points on why you chose this company as opposed to the ones you have?
Yeah, so the other companies that we looked at, the other 2 that were recommended, both local, both had been engaged with other Marion County districts. One of the references that I received from a nearby district in terms of one of the firms that we were looking at was not what I was hoping to hear. And then also just the overall, because the national presence, this is their long-term, this is their business, right? And so they have an established history, and some of the other districts or some of the other vendors are just getting started. And so I just thought there was a little bit more certainty in this process and this outcome. And then finally, I would say based on this scope, as you can see, as in the attachment, it is extremely detailed. And that was one thing I did note in my review of all the vendors, was just how concrete they were at walking us through how this would look. So
If there are no more questions, I move that we approve the agreement with the district strategic planning partner. Education elements as presented by Dr. Taylor.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Taylor. That concludes the action item section of our meeting today. Now on to the last item of the day of this meeting is information items, enrollment management rezoning recommendations for 2025 to 2026 school year. Dr. Taylor.
yeah, I'll just. Thank you again, President Turner, members of the board, Dr. Woodson. I am here tonight to share with you for our info item, a recommendation for school boundary rezoning. And so this evening, I'm going to outline some of our past work that we have completed as an enrollment management advisory task force. comprised of district leaders, building leaders, WTA representatives, and board members. We will review a future timeline of how this work is going to shape up or how this recommendation is going to proceed moving forward. And then we'll dive into the reviewing the actual rezoning scenario, recommendation, and impact, and then discuss communications and engagement plan. And then I'll conclude with questions. I will say with me tonight for backup support is our phenomenal Transpar leadership team in the back here. They have been critical partners in this work. They are the master puzzle piece teammates that are breaking up our district and trying to put all of our ideas into play. So we have gone back and forth, and Transpar has done a great job of being very responsive to our needs and our questions. And if some question comes about that I can't answer, perhaps Micah and Josh in the back here can help me out. So first up, where have we been? We created guiding principles to start this work as a task force. And in looking at those guiding principles, what you'll notice is we were just trying to set some parameters about what are some priorities that we wanted to maintain as we looked at solving some of the enrollment challenges we were looking at. And so I'll dive into the enrollment challenges here in a little bit, but we started there. We conducted and reviewed potential transportation non-eligibility zones or safe walk zones to just determine if there's a potential in the district for safe walk zones. We analyzed and eliminated second tier 6:15 p.m. late buses at North Central so that we could reallocate driver support and support more field trips because we were really stretched as being short-staffed with drivers. We were really stretched in that area. We reviewed academic programming relative to high-ability self-contained programming at Fox Hill. We looked at special education and our continuum of services and supports throughout the district, school by school. We also looked at the dual language immersion program at Willow Lake, and we discussed plans for future strategic planning. Finally, we introduced rezoning scenarios, which leads me here tonight. So what are some of the problems that we were trying to solve with this rezoning analysis? First, we have an imbalanced enrollment right now in our middle schools. And we've heard since the new Northview Middle School opened or was about to open, we've heard from families living right around Nora Elementary School that they had a desire to return back to the original attendance boundaries prior to 17-18, a desire to return so that they were Nora, Northview, North Central, primarily because of convenience. And we understand that. We also had some neighborhoods in Eastwood that traditionally were Eastwood neighborhoods that were rezoned to Northview as a result of 17-18 redistricting work. And we know there's a desire for some of those families to return to Eastwood, so they're Clearwater, Eastwood, North Central. We needed to look at the expansion of dual language immersion programming because we are right now at K-5 at Willow Lake, and we need to articulate that program K-8. And so we know we need a direct feeder from Willow Lake into West Lane, which we did not have before. Demographers did not predict, I think this is a really important one, our demographic study did not predict this unbalanced increase in enrollment that we were celebrating earlier in Superintendent Woodson's announcements. Significant growth these last 2 years, which were not predictive. In fact, I think the demographic study had us losing enrollment for the next 7 years. So we are not on necessarily the most stable grounds right now in predicting enrollment outcomes. We are at capacity at Willow Lake and Clearwater with their enrollment. We are near capacity at Allisonville, while we also know that Nora, Spring Mill, and Greenbrier are significantly below capacity. We know we need to create space at Willow Lake because there continues to be a desire for growth in DLI programming. And we know we need to maintain or improve current routing efficiencies. In the last couple years, we've really become more efficient. The transportation system has done an excellent job of being more reliable than they were 2 years ago. And so we want to continue to see that improvement. So tonight I'm here to present a recommendation for board consideration. What we want to do is post this meeting is we want to engage our community, particularly those stakeholders impacted in reviewing the draft recommendation and getting some of their feedback on the proposal. And then we plan to present a final recommendation to the board in December. Post-December, we'll begin communications and education as well as marketing for those proposed changes. So families impacted will have time to plan accordingly. We'll have time to visit their child's new school if they're impacted and so forth. We will have to start routing changes and transportation adjustments relatively early in that second semester per past practice. That will be required. And then obviously we'll implement those changes over the summer with board approval for return in school in late July next school year. Our goals are for Eastwood zone surrounding new Northview campus to be rezoned to Northview. We wanted to create a direct feeder from Willow Lake to West Lane. That would support that consistency with the DLI transitioning. We want to improve enrollment balance between our middle school campuses because they have fallen out of balance these last few years. We want to improve enrollment balance between elementary school campuses for Greenbrier and Willow Lake. And then we want to eliminate as many island zones as we can, still taking into account socioeconomic status implications, which was the original reason or part of the reason for the shift back in 1819. Island zones, more specifically, those are where you have a large percentage of the community going to one school, but you might have this one neighborhood off by itself going to a different one. And there's reasons for that, and that's through balancing. And so we tried to consider making sure our students could go to the schools that were closest to where they live with this work. So here's a visual of the first scenario recommendation, the first part of it. So you can see on the left, you can see the current middle school boundary. So we're going to start and we're going to talk about middle school. So you can see where those arrows are pointing right now, that in the yellow, that is surrounded by red, those are current Eastwood students. Okay, and you can see where Eastwood, I'm following my arrow here, is way over here. All right, and there's a desire for those families to return to Northview, which you can see now evident in the proposed middle school boundary adjustment. You can also see on this northwestern part of this Northview West Lane border, if we move over here, it would be taking those Northview families and zoning them to West Lane. Specific neighborhoods impacting, when we're looking at from Eastwood to 91st, that's that 91st to 96th Street, Meridian to College area. Nora Pines, the Hub, College and Carlisle Court, Villages of Longwood, that's about 90 students in that vicinity that would return to Northview, which was their, where they attended prior to 1819. And then from Northview to Eastwood, there's about 52 students impacted here, where that's Ravenswood and some families along west of Keystone, that's about 71st to 62nd Street. From Northview to Willow Lake, or excuse me, West Lane, we have private reserve apartment community. We have from 79th to 75th, Ditch to Harcourt area. And we have Harcourt and Marquise Lane, that's about 84 students who would be rezoned from Northview to West Lane. And again, that's neighborhoods right in this area right here. So you can see their geographic location to West Lane compared to their trip to Northview. As far as elementaries, again, our only focus on elementaries was Willow Lake and Greenbrier. You can see with the arrows that red zone, or I should say pink, excuse me, pink zone right here is Willow Lake current boundary. Okay, what we would be doing is we'd be carving off where these 3 arrows are. There's about 5 neighborhoods impacted here. Those would now become rezoned for Greenbrier at the start of next school year. Some things to note. These are about 5 neighborhoods impacted. 2 of those 3 are apartment communities. The others are single-family residential neighborhood areas, units. And when you look at this at first, you think, my goodness, Willow Lake is significantly smaller than the rest of the zones for the other elementaries. What's important to note is a couple of things. First of all, this is a heavily populated area of the district. Okay? Believe it or not, at Willow Lake, even with these neighborhoods carved off, we're still going to be larger than Greenbrier at Willow Lake. Also to note, in Greenbrier, this was their original pocket. This is a major commercial zone right through here. So even though that looks bigger, Greenbrier really is in those pockets and these 4 corners, and then you have this area. So Greenbrier looks bigger there, but it really isn't. So Greenbrier currently is serving a little over 500 students. So let's talk about the impact of that specifically. So we would just be, those are the 5 neighborhoods impacted from 79th to 72nd Street from Meridian to Hoover area, 86th to 75th Street from Monon Trail down to Meridian area. Willow Lake to Greenbrier, we have Lions Head and Meridian Lake Apartments. We have 79th to 73rd, Hoover to Ditch, and we have Country Brook North and Hampton apartment communities that would be rezoned to Greenbrier next year. So it's important to note that there are a number of students who are in the current DLI programming at Willow Lake that make up this total of 104 students. Okay, 54 of those students would be able to stay at Willow Lake because of their proximities with each other. We can maintain current routing efficiencies by accommodating those 54 students and providing transportation to Willow Lake instead of them having to go to Greenbrier. That is an exception to the rule per past practices in our district. And the reason why that is because we have no other way to replicate right now DLI programming in any other building in Washington Township. So it would not be fair to these families who chose Willow Lake, who moved to that area, who have been part of that DLI programming where a majority or half of their instruction every day is in Spanish, to say, oh, you got to go to Greenbrier. So our plan, our recommendation right now is for those DLI students to still receive transportation if they need it to maintain their current enrollment at Willow Lake. So let's talk through the overall impact, and then we'll get a little bit more into the granular aspects of this recommendation. So when you think big picture of a district with over 11,000 students, we are impacting 277 students. That's less than 3% of our overall population. We're recommending a very conservative approach while still feeling like we can address the problems that we set out to address. So again, when you look at Eastwood impact, they would be losing 90 students to Northview. Northview would be losing 136 students, 52 of which to Eastwood, 84 to West Lane. Willow Lake, you're looking at losing 51 students, but a total of 104 students would be rezoned. And then that DLI impact, you see 53 students would still be rezoned to Greenbrier, but we could still provide transportation to them if needed to stay at Willow Lake. Overall capacities, you can see that Greenbrier, even though picking up students, only would go to about 570 students for their projected enrollment next school year. Whereas Willow Lake grows some capacity back, lessens the load a little bit, down to 660, their capacity at 750. That's their projected enrollment for next school year. Eastwood, 754. Northview losing, that takes them over 1,000 right now, down to 910 in projection. West Lane, about 845. So not perfect balance, but improved balance. And then again, transportation efficiencies were a factor. We do recoup one route with this recommended proposal. Over on the right side here, you can see basically the impact that I reiterated earlier. We still address the majority of our whys, which I'll talk about in more detail later on. So this next slide is just an overall picture, restating our goals and looking at the rezoning recommendation. And so you can see where it says number 1 there. Over on the side here, we have number 1, Eastwood zone surrounding New Northview campus is rezoned to New Northview. That was one of our goals. 2, we look at still creating that Willow Lake to West Lane direct feeder from Willow Lake to West Lane. So we can support that consistent transition of DLI programming. We better improve enrollment balance across our 3 middles. And then we also improve some of the out of whack balances right now between Greenbrier and Willow Lake. So does this scenario recommendation address our whys? You can see, again, why are we doing this work? Imbalance at Northview Middle School and desire for those neighborhoods to return to Northview from Eastwood, check. Expansion of DLI programming into West Lane, check. Capacity challenges at Clearwater, that's a check minus. Allisonville and Willow Lake, and here's why. Right now, we looked at Clearwater, they're our next largest school. Them and Willow Lake are kind of neck and neck in terms of at capacity. We looked at shedding some Clearwater neighborhoods. The problem with doing that is we created double route times for those families because they would, due to capacity issues, the only places they could really go where it wasn't a significant impact to routing was Fox Hill. So we have looked at Clearwater in terms of right now, that is one of our highest choice schools. It's one of our highest non-resident schools. And so if you can think about, I think Dr. Kaiser at one point said, it's like a faucet. Sometimes non-resident, it's like a faucet. When you need it, it's great. But when you don't, you got to turn it off. And so we would have to consider at Clearwater to create a little more space is we would have to cap or consider capping future non-resident applications or future in-district limited choice applications to Clearwater to allow them to recoup some of that capacity, which could easily happen in a gradual 2 to 3 year process if we were far more conservative on whether or not that faucet's open or closed, if you will. And then you creating space for the Willow Lake DLI programming, and then maintain or improve current routing efficiencies, which we check both of those because we did recoup where we have a little bit of improvement with one less route. So frequently asked questions, which schools are impacted by this proposal? Again, there's 5 total schools: Eastwood Middle School, West Lane Middle School, but West Lane Middle School is not losing students that are gaining. Northview Middle School, Willow Lake Elementary School, and Greenbrier Elementary School. And Greenbrier is not losing students, they're only gaining. Total impact is 277 students. Why are we having to do this when we just built 2 new schools? Again, enrollment boom. We celebrate it, but that enrollment boom would be perfect if we had it equally dispersed throughout all of our schools, but that's just not the reality. Is the enrollment increase only due to an increase in non-resident enrollment, as we've alluded to earlier? No. We have seen the most enrollment increase in our elementaries, followed by our middle schools, and then with our high school last. What if my child wants to stay at his or her final year of 5th grade or 8th grade? This tends to come up a lot when you talk through these, and I get it. That's a challenge as a parent myself. You know, can I just leave my child for their 5th grade year at Willow Lake? And the challenge is, if you do that and you accommodate that, you don't fix any of the problems you're trying to solve. And so is there an opportunity for that to happen at schools that are not impacted by this? Yes, we absolutely could consider that if they're limited choice somewhere else or whatever. But unfortunately, we just can't accommodate the grandfathering anywhere else, with the exception of that DLI programming, just because of the uniqueness of that programming. What about challenges at Clearwater and Allisonville? As I talked to, that was my faucet metaphor. And right now, we do think we can recoup some capacity at those schools if we're more conservative with who we allow or approve with their limited choice or non-resident applications. When would this change take place? At the beginning of next school year? Would I have a chance to visit the school if I'm being reassigned to one? Absolutely. We want to make this the best transition we possibly can, given the difficult circumstances. Nobody wants to do this, but we have some challenges we have to address, we can't ignore. And so we do plan to survey our community. Just some questions. Here's the proposal. Give us some feedback. What are some concerns? What are questions? What are comments that you think we should be taking into consideration, or we need further education on as a community relative to these pieces? I will say, I'll also share that there are the exact puzzle pieces that I can upload for review too, that Transcar did help us put together with some of their slide information that breaks those puzzle pieces down even further for our community to see. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have at this time relative to this rezoning recommendation.
Board? Mrs. George Davis?
Can we go back to the visuals of the elementary school boundaries?
Yes.
No, I don't have slide numbers. Yes. So I know we're trying to eliminate islands, right? But there's a very clear orange island, 2 of them on the west side. Is that because of routing, or like, what is the theory behind not absorbing them into the green?
So like, into what? I'm sorry.
Like into the green for Greenbrier.
So that's a private reserve apartment community, and we just moved them a couple years ago from Willow Lake to Spring Mill due to these capacity issues. That is a heavily dense community. So to rezone them to Willow Lake essentially only adds to Willow Lake. To rezone them to Greenbrier right now would be just because they've moved most recently. We just felt like maintaining those families where they currently are is best, because it's not a significant geographic change.
So just curious, how long approximately are those kiddos on the bus?
So for private reserves, they are on the bus probably around 10 to 15 minutes right now.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Horace Kruger?
So I know we've talked about this before, but I just want to lift it up. So 277 students, less than 3%. Is that going to get us where we need to be for helping now and helping in the future? Not that I'm advocating for more students to be changed, but is this enough?
So that's a great question. Because of the challenges that we're having with predicting our enrollment, it's hard for me to say that this is going to be enough. Having said that, I do believe, though conservative, I do believe we've built in some space, enough space and breathing room to check off those whys with this approach. The last thing anybody wants to do is come back here a year from now or 2 years from now even and say, no, we got to redo or undo this. And so I do believe that even though this is somewhat of a path of least resistance approach, it's enough of an approach to accomplish what we're trying to get done.
I'd also like to mention that Mrs. Smith is working with our demographer to have an update, the demographic study done, which was baked into the last contract the board approved with them.
Can I add a little more to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was the board member on the task force. There were some other kind of scenarios that were played with that did more at the elementary level, but given all the constraints, it still didn't really move the needle a lot in terms of like, so for example, the fact that, oh gosh, we really wish we could have done something to relieve that capacity issue at Clearwater. Again, we all know with the river and the, east, west, even when, the task force kind of looked at some things that would affect more students to try to move the needle more, it actually didn't move the needle very much more. So, and I will say again, having been on the task force and going to all these meetings all year, not to pat ourselves on the back, but I do think part of the reason, we could always do more. We did look at it. It just didn't move the needle enough. But I do think, even though, we're adjusting some things now from 18, 19, I do think the district did a good job going really deep. Bill, you would have been here, and John, you would have been here in 18, 19 when we opened those 2 new schools. And I think the fact that there was really only so much we could do here is kind of a testament to the fact that 5, 6 years ago, the process was good. I mean, it was thorough. It really kind of took into effect everything we could possibly take into effect, such that we're now in a situation where we did look at things. Okay, if we affect more students, could we move the needle more? And it was like, only a little. So that helps. Question further.
Questions, board? And again, this is a info item, first time bringing it to the board. This is not a recommendation or anything at this time. And when you did the survey, I'm assuming, you didn't say it, but I'm assuming it's on the website for parents. Or are you sending that
We'll
out?
have a communication that goes out.
You're gonna send it out? Okay. And is it to all parents or to those that?
We'll give it to all parents so everybody has a heads up, because middle school, all 3 middle schools are impacted. You know what I mean? So it's still a significant amount of schools impacted, in my opinion. But we also are going to work with our principals on some real deliberate outreach for those impacted.
Okay.
So those principals are well aware of what's going to happen. We have a principals meeting tomorrow morning. I'm going to get to do this all over again. And we'll get a little bit more into the weeds on what our communication outreach is going to be relative to those schools.
This is George Davis.
I have another question, and you may not know the answer to this, but it's based on something Dr. Woodson just said. So where Mrs. Smith is working on with the demographer, so do we know when we're expected to have that data? Because if that data comes back, it could, I'm the data, that could skew all of this, right? If it comes back and they say we're expecting, 1,000 new, I'm being outrageous here, 1,000 new families in Washington Township, and that could kind of throw this all out of whack. So are we prepared with some contingencies in case that comes back with some crazy numbers?
Sure, I see what you said. What Dr. Woodson was referring to, it's not a full complete study like the first one. It's called like a refresh, what he does. And I did put some of that information in your ADM memo. And what I would be working with is the demographer on giving him our recent information. And then what he does a streamlined version of what he did before. Then we have a meeting, he explains it all to me, then I can put it in a report form. His part does not include another full report like he did in the past. So then I would put his information into some type of report form to the board. But a full demographic study that would give all the birth rates, all that kind of stuff that the first one was, this would not be that. So usually we do something like that depending on our enrollment every 5 to 7 years. But with it being this much out of whack, we wanted to make sure that we got his refresh version of it, but it's still not the detailed with all that other information because it hasn't stabilized. So he kind of just updates on a high level surface for us. And I don't predict that it would have us having significant changes. I believe with a refresh, this is just my opinion since I haven't had to have one in my 21-year career. And due to this type of discrepancies with our enrollment, but I do not think that that would pose a big difference in the future. I think that he would stable it out more. That's my guess, that it would look more stable based on the previous information that he already had on file. And now that we've kind of combated some of those intricacies that was indicating why we were reducing. So I think that my prediction, I could be wrong when I get the information from him, that his will show that we're leveling out more. And that like Dr. Kaiser and Dr. Taylor stated, that we would be able to manage those based on the non-resident and the in-district limited choice by those individual families actually put a first, second, and third choice. So we can control some of that in the future with that. And that is hard for a demographer to try to guess how we would control those type of things. Good question.
Really important detailed information for us, but it's just a guide.
Exactly.
And so had we years ago listened to the demographic study, which said we were going to steadily decline, not significant, but just steadily decline, we wouldn't have built an 8th elementary school.
Right.
My word, aren't we glad we did? Right. So it's still just a guide to give us more information, but so many factors impact facilities and enrollment, as Mrs. Smith said, that we have lots of guides bringing information to the table.
And I will say too, again, these projections are based on current enrollment, right? Not longitudinal trends or anything, current enrollment as they're moving through our system. So that's how we made these proposals based on.
Other questions? Well, thank you, Dr. Taylor.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you want to?
Oh, just to,
Because I'm sorry, we're done with information. I
yeah,
thank you.
So sorry.
But before
Well,
we,
while you're there.
Yeah. before we close, before I ask for adjournment, I'm asked Ms. Horst Kruger to mention something.
Just a reminder that the huge fundraiser for the township is Saturday, November the 9th. It's the Bash. Tickets are available on the website, on the, excuse me? Okay, from the main website. It's a great event. And of course, proceeds help fund the foundation, which helps fund programs for our kids. So just a mention of that.
Thank you. Any other good for the order? I'll entertain a motion. Everybody's talking now. Look at this. Go ahead.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. We are adjourned.